questions on William Kerr from West Lothian suggesting the party a bit disconnected. Mary Taylor from Inverkeithing want Labour to formulate and publicise a campaign about alternatives to an independent Scotland. Very disparate questions,
yes,
but there's a common theme between them, which is the Labour Party requiring to re-engage. What went wrong in the election campaign? Big question.
Huge question. A huge question, and made all the huger, if that's such a word, all the more serious by the fact that, in general terms, we didn't see it coming. People have said that in at the last election we were complacent. I think we were cautious, and our caution came from a feeling that power was very close, and the opportunity that power would give us to make a difference to people's lives was just beyond reach. I think the review has established this. My own reflections on this are that people didn't believe what we were saying. They didn't believe we were listening to them. We didn't believe that our primary purpose was to stand up for them. We are now in a place where we absolutely are committed to putting Scotland first, that our role is to argue for and articulate Labour values, which I believe are very closely in relation to Scottish values about cooperation, about sharing. If you've got a strong economy, how do we create shared prosperity? How do we address the questions that too many of our young people's futures are determined by the time they're 3? These are the things that motivate me. That disconnection means that we have to listen and learn from people, and we engage and we open ourselves up to speaking to people, learning from them, but also saying, actually, here's the thing, we have a distinctive message for the people of Scotland. We believe in this strongly. We believe we can have a fairer society with a strong economy, as I've said, and that we have to, again, I suppose the challenge for us is both to have the humility to recognise the scale of the defeat, what caused that, but also not a council of despair where we sit back and indulge ourselves when we know there are so many huge political arguments that we need to engage with in the coming period.
Do you think, I mean, you're speaking at the party conference this weekend, you'll be signalling the need for change. Do you think the change required is what? Candidate selection, organisation, what? The way the party is formulated?
It's all of these things. Yes. It's the focus and the purpose of us being, why do we want power? What do we want to do? What is our vision for Scotland and the United Kingdom and the world? What do we believe in? We're not finessing our position. We're not finding a narrative. I think we have to find a way of telling our story about what our Scotland could look like. But that is also about understanding. The fine words are there. You need the organisational changes to make that happen. We need an electoral machinery that's fit for purpose and is not telling us things that were completely entirely wrong. And we need to the extent to which I think people feel a cynicism about politics. We need to be part of coming back in that. This is not about being cynical or self-serving. It is about being part of a debate about how we create a better society. Just
among the umpteen questions that folks sent in, and again, thanks for all the questions that came in the dozens and hundreds. You'll not be surprised to learn that many of them are on the constitutional question, independence, Devo Max, Devo Plus, whatever formulation. Let's just try a few of those now. First of all, a particular issue. Do you agree with Alex Salmond's plans to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in the referendum? That's from Samuel Theodorides.
Well, these are one of the things that are going out into the consultation. Yes. Our party's position has been that we would look at extending the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds. Our view is if you're going to do that, it should be for all elections, and it needs to be done in a proper way, in an effective way.
Why don't you just start with the referendum? Why not start with that? If it's good in principle, why not do it in practice for the referendum?
Well, we said it felt right in principle, although of course there are people who disagree with that because there's a huge question about the level of apathy and disinterest and disengagement with people who are over 18. So I think even participation in itself is not actually about age and stage. There'll be some 16 and 17-year-olds who will be very engaged, and many, like their counterparts up to 25 and beyond, who are not. So it's not a silver bullet round engagement. My own view is that we need to look at it, interrogate it. How do you make it real for all elections? And of course, beside that, there's a parallel argument about the franchise being proposed by the First Minister, which actually does perhaps exclude people who are not living in Scotland currently, who may be not living in Scotland because they couldn't get work in Scotland. So there is a debate around the franchise. And
yes, but if you extend the franchise, you have to abandon the Hollywood franchise, which is the one Mr. Salmond is not making up a franchise, he's using the one laid down in statute in
yes,
in
and I
the
think
Scotland
what he's
Act.
proposing around 16 and 17-year-olds is not actually to extend...
Laid down by Labour in the Scotland Act.
It's not actually about extending the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds.
No,
it's
those who are on the
extending
register.
it to 16 and 17-year-olds who've got themselves on
the
ahead of
register.
being 18.
That's
So
right.
there's a bit of randomness about that as well, which I'm more than happy in our cross-party talks
To look at.
with the First Minister. We need to look at that, but it
Okay.
needs to be fair and people need to sign up for that.
Another thing, Ross Chesla, forgive me again if the name is wrong, why do you refuse to allow a third option, basically a status quo independence and a third option of maybe Devo Max or enhanced devolution? Why you keep it? Why do you want that kept off the
Well,
ballot
as
paper?
you've also said, there's Devo Plus. There's it's not just a third option. There's a whole series of options
Well,
round
once it was
devolution.
defined,
It's very difficult.
why doesn't Labour define one?
Well,
then
it's
and put it
very
in the ballot
difficult to
paper?
see how you would define any of these onto the ballot paper ahead of any of the others. But can I make the more serious point? People say, and First Minister himself says, that they want a decisive decision on the question: do we want to remain a part of the United Kingdom, or do we wish to separate? Do we want to leave the United Kingdom? That's the fundamentally biggest decision that people of Scotland have to make. Do we break up a partnership that's existed for 300 years? That has to be clear, and the outcome has to be clear. The process is important in order that everybody accepts the result. But what is unacceptable is for the First Minister to try and paint those of us who wish to stay inside the United Kingdom as being conservative on the constitutional question. Labour drove the debate on devolution. Labour got into power, and within 2 years the Scottish Parliament was up and running. And we have always been clear that in relation to powers, it's what works in the best interest of the people of Scotland. That's a debate about how you sustain and make the United Kingdom stronger. It is not about, do you want to stay inside the United Kingdom or not? We need clarity on whether we stay in the United Kingdom or not. And that's why that one question is so important. But that is not to say, therefore, what they're voting. If people say, yes, I want to stay in the United Kingdom,
yes,
it is as is and forevermore. Devolution has already changed significantly. My view is that it could and probably should change again, but that is a separate
you're
debate.
willing to consider more powers, including perhaps more tax powers, beyond the current Scotland Bill?
Yes, I
Beyond
have said already that nothing is off the table in relation to that debate. My test is, how does it best serve the interests of the people of Scotland, the strength of the economy and the opportunity for social justice and a challenge in inequality? It's not a virility symbol for me, but where powers lie, it must be in Holyrood, because that makes Holyrood a strong institution. All institutions are about serving the people of Scotland, and I want the debate about what makes sense to remain at United Kingdom level, what should be at a Scottish level, but actually how beyond that do we liberate and access the voices within our communities who want to shape local decision making, and I think that is part of that longer term process.
We now have a specific proposal being advanced by a grouping headed by Jeremy Purvis. Duncan McNeill from the Labour Party is there as a member of that scrutiny team. Now their proposal is Devo Plus, which is transferring welfare benefits except pensions to Scotland and having control of all income tax and all corporation tax, with the power to vary those and possibly compete, bring about tax competition. That's the original proposal, which will now be scrutinised by this group. What do you make of that? Are you attracted to that ideologically as an idea?
Well,
or concerned?
I'm happy, delighted, pleased that we interrogate all of these options. I would find it very difficult to be persuaded on the benefits of tax competition, given my view that the strength of the United Kingdom is this cooperation partnership, particularly in times of economic challenge, and we see the kind of sense of powerlessness we have when we look at what's happening in the Eurozone. Why would it be a good idea for us to devolve corporation tax, to cut it? So we get into competition with the City of London. Do we end up in a place where we have a race to the bottom and what economists call wasteful competition? There is no benefit to that competition except to those big businesses who don't want to pay corporation tax at all. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make much sense to me. What I've said is I want these options interrogated.
How about income tax? Would again the idea that Scotland could undercut the rest of the UK on income tax be a bit of a dodgy one for you?
Well, and people have talked about it in terms of increasing income tax in order to fund benefits. But somebody put it to me, there's a kind of and this is the real world that we have to relate to in relation to how people behave in relation to these decisions. Actually, a finance minister in a Scottish government with very significant tax varying powers would cut for upper levels of taxation, because you would then see people coming across the border to get a benefit from it. Does that mean that overall the income tax takes across the United Kingdom is reducing? Is that a good thing? These are things
on
that
balance,
we need to look at.
it sounds like you'd rather leave alone on tax generally.
Well,
have uniformity across the UK in order to bring about the social cohesion that you're talking about, the redistribution?
Well, it's social cohesion and preventing a circumstance where you create unnecessary and wasteful competition.
Okay.
But I have said, and I recognise a lot of work being done on this, that you need to look at the evidence and test that against some of maybe more scaremongering suggestions that people would abuse the system.
William Cruikshank, Jonathan Austin, both roughly the same question. Why are you against independence? What's wrong with it?
I'm in favour of the cooperation and partnership that the United Kingdom creates. I think a bit of me finds identity politics difficult. The big things that drive me, the things that concern me, I don't believe that child poverty and inequality were created by the decision 300 years ago to go into the United Kingdom. I don't believe that if we change our constitutional arrangements in the rest of the United Kingdom, that scar about life chances and opportunities will be addressed. I think it's a false question and a false premise. I find that frustrating. I think the bigger political challenge is actually how do you create economic circumstances and a focus in government on addressing inequality. And for me, that is something that is more likely to happen in the United Kingdom. I see it as a redistributive model, that money is coming out of the richest bits of the United Kingdom and can be distributed across the whole of the United Kingdom. My concern about children living in poverty doesn't stop at the border.
And yet Ian Shepherd points out that he's asking, do you think Ireland would be better off as part of the UK or Luxembourg as part of Germany? They're basically translating it, saying those countries that have independence don't tend to surrender it.
Well, there's an interesting kind of conflation of ideas here about who we're treating against. I mean, I do think the First Minister rather likes the idea of perceived as being a liberator of Scotland and that we're oppressed by the English or the United Kingdom. I just simply think that is not the case. The countries that moved away from the United Kingdom and chose independence had a colonial relationship with the United Kingdom, and that was an empire in which we actively, as Scots, engaged, as opposed to in the other direction. So I just think that my sense is the United Kingdom is a partnership. There are strong family ties. There are very rational and logical economic benefits from it, and it's on that basis. But please do not think that I believe that Scotland isn't strong enough or whatever to make that choice.
Scotland could be independent.
Of course it could be. It's a matter of people of Scotland to decide.
Yes.
And I indeed said in my own leadership contest that should that decision be made on a clear basis and we separate off, that the politics of equality and social justice will remain to be fought and won.
Malcolm Osborne from Buntyland making the point that when it comes to a referendum, if you haven't put in a Devo Max or Devo Plus option, you know what independence is for, you know what a yes vote brings. He says you wouldn't know in those circumstances what a no vote means because you guys have all deferred that option till after the referendum.
Well, two things there. First of all, we don't know what independence means. We absolutely do not know what independence means. The First Minister asserts both that it is
it's a bit clearer than
it's this huge and massive step and a huge and massive change. On the other hand, there is no risk and there is no change, and we'd be in the monetary union.
Control of tax and spending, it means membership of the European Union and membership of the United Nations. How would that do?
He asserts. But actually he even says, well, we'll be in a monetary union with the rest of the United Kingdom, but that relationship would be a very different one than if we were part of the United Kingdom. And I agree that we should set out our vision for how Scotland can change and its relationship inside the United Kingdom should change. That debate is not on pause. You can't stop. That debate is ongoing. There's a separate argument about whether that should then be on the ballot paper. All of the main parties say we want one question because we want to decide, for those who have fought for Scotland to become a separate country for the last, Alec Salmon's case, for 40 years, he wants that clarity too. We need to have that clarity, and then we make that decision and we deal with the consequences as they are found.
Final question, you mentioned Alex Salmond. How do you regard him as a human being, as a man?
Well, I don't have any. I mean, to some extent, I don't have any. He has never been anything other than entirely civil and friendly when I've met him personally. I enjoy.
But he's just a political opponent. Yeah.
I enjoy the political argument. I'm frustrated and disappointed by the political perspectives that he presents to people of Scotland, which explains the real challenges in terms that I don't agree. I fundamentally disagree with him on the question of his vision for the future of Scotland, but that's what it is.
And you think the Union will win the referendum in those circumstances?
I believe the strongest case can be made for Scotland staying strong in partnership and cooperation with the rest of the United Kingdom. We need to go on to that argument, make that case, and it's for the people of Scotland to be confident of what the options are and then to make their decision.
Johann Lamont, thank you very much indeed for joining me and for taking the questions from our listeners, viewers and readers. Thanks to you who wrote in with questions. That's the first of our webcasts from me, Brian Taylor. Toodaloo.